In this video, you are going to take a peek inside one of my Framer sessions where I'm trying to explain Michael how he can work with components and interactions to create amazing animations in Framer. My name is Nandi, this is Framer University, and let's get started. Okay, so Michael, you basically approached me with the question. You had an issue with this interaction right here that I'm showing right now. Is that right?
Yes, what I got stuck on, creating the interaction was easy, but I couldn't get the right side to work.
Yeah.
It's all one hover.
Yeah, because you can actually hover the left one, but when you're hovering the right one, the left one is actually hovering. What I also noticed here, so some of the things that I noticed, one is really obvious that we cannot hover the right one, only the left one. And another thing that I noticed is that these images are like weirdly resizing themselves and weirdly jumping when they are resizing. So as you can see, if you are focusing on the right one, when I hover it and it gets smaller, the image,
squishes.
Yeah. So we're gonna also fix that. I'm gonna show you how you can properly build it so it will be like this. So really smooth, really nice. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually create a component for the card. So we are going to use components and variants to make our life easier, and we're gonna create actually two components. One component will be this card here, and this card right here on the right will be actually using the same component, so that we don't have to design these two times. We have to just create one component that we can then reuse on the left and on the right side as well. This card component will actually have three variants. So if we look at this, what variants we have? The first variant is this one, what we see right now. This is the default variant. And then we also have the hover variant. And then you see the third variant on the right side, the right card, is actually having the third variant that we're going to have. And that's kind of like an idle variant where we actually don't show any text within the card. So is it clear?
Yep.
Okay, so that's going to be the first component, the card. And then the second component will be the actual container that is going to wrap these two cards. Now we can actually go into Framer and create the card component. So what I usually do is I create all the necessary elements for the component here on the canvas. And then when I have almost everything, or maybe everything that I need within the component, then I turn the frame into a component. So first I just draw a frame. This will be called card, and I can actually remove the fill color because we're not going to need that. The height will be 450 and the width will be maybe 600. And so the first thing is the issue with the images jumping. It's because this card right here has the image as the background. So if I were to select this card right now and set fill, image, and choose that image as the background image, that would basically cause the same issue. So that's why we're not going to do that. To make sure we are not seeing that issue anymore, we're going to use a separate layer within this card component so that it will not jump, but it will stay fixed. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to turn the card into a stack just to make sure that if I place an element inside of it, it will be relatively positioned by default. So if I place more elements within it, then they will be placed right next to each other or right below each other. So the first element that we're going to add to this card will be actually an image wrap. So I'm going to call this image wrap, and I'm going to set it to absolute positioning, and I'm going to activate all these pins. This will mean that basically if I change the size of this card, the image wrap will also change because it will be pinned to all sides. So now we have this. I can also remove the fill color from this. And within the image wrap, we're gonna have the actual image. So I'm not gonna create a frame. I'm just gonna quickly copy this over here. And I'm gonna press Option H and Option V. And then I'm gonna make sure that it fits the size of the card. So I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna make sure that these pins are deactivated here. Just to make sure that nothing can influence the position of this image. And that's how we can actually achieve that whenever this card is getting resized, the image is not jumping around like crazy, but it will stay fixed and it will nicely mask down as this card is getting smaller or bigger. Okay, so now we have the image. Over the image, I'm gonna probably place an overlay just to make sure that we will have a little bit more contrast with the text. So I'm gonna just draw a frame here and then place it here. All pins are gonna be activated and set to 0. And then I'm gonna choose a black color with 15% transparency. So now the image is a bit darker. I'm gonna call this overlay just to keep everything super clean. And then I'm gonna duplicate this. And this will be called color. And this will actually have the color that we will see on hover. But now this will be opacity 0, so we are not going to see it. But you know, when we will need it, we can just set the opacity to 1 and it will be shown. So, okay, now we have everything within the image wrap. What I usually do with these kind of elements is that I lock them. It's because when I try adding more frames, for example, to this card, I don't want those to be placed within the color frame, for example. So that's why I lock it. And now that it's locked, I can create frames here. And it is going to be within the card stack and not within the image wrap or the color. But it is still below the image because we cannot see this frame right here. And that's because this image wrap has a Z index set to 1. So I can remove that. And we cannot see it still. So what we need to do is to move it up here. And so it needs to be above the frame on the layers panel to be below it on the canvas. The reason for this is because this card is a stack. And when something is turned into a stack, the ordering works a bit differently. So what comes first, it's going to be on the bottom. And the second element will be above that. The next element will be above that again. And that's how ordering works and within stacks. Now we have this frame. We can call this content. We will have these texts here. Explore the L1, meet, and the arrow. All those will be within the content frame. So the fill color can be removed. I'm going to make it a bit bigger and I will add the first text. It will be explore the L1. Explore the L1. Okay. And as you can see now I can, freely place it anywhere within this content frame, but I don't really want to absolutely position it because it's not going to lead to any responsive behaviors. So again, I'm going to turn this content into a stack by clicking this layout button here. So now if I add more text here, they'll be nicely placed below each other. So that's exactly what we want. I'm going to set this text to fill up the available space and then change it to white. Okay, so now we have the title. I'm going to also rename this to title. Now we can create the subtext. The subtext will be this one. So I'm going to paste it in here. This is our subtext. It's going to be 18 pixels. And it is going to be with fill as well. And I'm going to just make sure that this content frame is a little bit smaller, like 230 pixel width. And now I can make the last little component or element within this content, and that's gonna be a button. So I'm gonna draw a frame right here, and then we need to round these corners. So I'm just going to set it to 100. And I'm going to rename this to button. And this is the subtext, by the way. And within this button, we need an icon. So we just pull up the insert menu. We can search for phosphor. So if we just type in phosphor here, we're going to see this little icon pack. We can just drag and drop it here. Make sure that it is centered and all the pins are deactivated. I'm going to resize it to 24 by 24. And we can just search for arrow right. And now we have this little arrow, and we're going to use black color for it. And now we have the arrow as well. But this arrow is in the middle of the content frame. So in order to change this, we can tweak the stack properties on the right side. So we have this layout here. This is the stack properties. We can set the alignment to the left, and basically that's it. That's all we need. The gap will be a little bit more, something like 24. And then we can also set the distribute to start. So the first element starts at the top of the stack. And now I'm gonna wrap the subtext and the button into a common frame. The reason for this is that basically later we are going to move these together. And if we wrap them in the common container, it will be much easier. So to wrap them in the common stack, I'm gonna just press Option, Command and Enter as they are selected. And now they are within this stack here. I'm gonna rename this to sub plus icon or button. And again, I'm just gonna tweak the properties here on the right. Gap will be 24, so a little bit more. The height will be fit content, so it fits the content within itself. The width will be fill, just to make sure that it fills up the available space at all times. And the alignment will be on the left, so the little button also jumps to the left side. Okay, that's really nice. What I will do right now is I will make sure that this is a little bit bigger. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the sub plus button, and I'm gonna make sure that it is absolutely positioned, because this way it is now not part of the flow of this content frame, so I can place it anywhere. So I can just move it with the arrow keys. So what I'm going to do is I will set it to 0 on the bottom, so it will stick to the bottom of this content frame. The reason why I'm doing this is because if we take a look at this right here, you can see that as I hover the card and the Explorer goes to the top, the subtext and the bottom also starts coming in, but as you can see, the space between the title and the subtext is not constant throughout the animation, but it is slowly getting smaller. So as you can see, there's almost like a delay between the Explore the L1 and the subtext and the button. I don't know, can you see that?
I can.
Yeah, so in order to have this effect, we actually need to place it a little bit, to the bottom, so there is more space here. And then when we will go to the hover state, we're gonna just swap it back to relative, so it will snap back to its place, and basically we will have that effect that we are looking for. But for now, we're gonna keep it like this. And all we need to do now is to select the card and make sure that the card's stack properties are set in a way that this content frame is on the left. So we're going to use distribute start, and also on the bottom. So we're going to also press this right here. And then I'm going to also make sure that we have some padding. So right now, as you can see, is really right next to the edges. We need to increase the padding to around 28 maybe. And so we now have a little bit more breathing room. And now we can just set this content to absolute positioning and activate the right pin. So it will be always 28 pixels from the left side. Sorry, not the right pin, the left pin. And then also activate the bottom pin. And by adjusting this value, we can just move it like this to this exact position, and that's it. Maybe this right here, maybe it's a little bit smaller text. So I'm gonna use 44 and then again move this a little bit to the bottom. So now we have this text here. It is positioned correctly, and yeah, it looks really cool. And all we have to do right now is to round the corners of the card. So we're gonna set it to 12. I think we have everything that we need within this card, because we have the image, we have the color that we will show when we hover it. We also have the subtext and the button. So I think now we can turn this into a component. So what I'll do is I'll click create component. So right click and create component, and it's going to be called card. So now we see the component canvas. Here we can, customize the card component and add different variants to it. This is here the primary variant. I'm going to rename it to default. This will be the default state of this card. And then I can actually click this little variant here, this button, and a new variant will be added. We're going to rename this to hover state. And what we can do right now is we can go here, find the color layer, and change the opacity to 1. So now we successfully made one change. The next change that we need to make is that we change the content frame from absolute to relative, so it snaps into its place. The sub plus button also needs to be changed back to relative. Again, it snaps to its place. And to make sure that we don't have this space right here, we will just make sure that the height is set to fit content, so it fits the content within itself. So basically, we now have the hover state. So just to check how this works, we can actually hit L on our keyboard when the primary default variant is selected, and just connect it to the hover state. And here we can select a trigger, mouse enter, and then from here, we're gonna go back to the default, and the trigger will be mouse leave. So when we leave the hover state, we go back to default. I'm gonna remove this enter interaction from here, because what is happening is that every single change that we make on the primary variant will be affecting all the other variants. So if we add an interaction to the default primary variant, it's going to be added on the hover state as well, and that's why this mouse enter interaction is also added to the hover state. We can just remove that. So if we preview this, you can see as I hover this card, the hover state is nicely displayed. And what's good about this is that Framer will nicely and smartly animate between those states, so we don't have to worry about that. So it looks pretty cool. Now we have 2 variants out of the 3, so I'm going to add the last variant. This will be called idle. I'm going to remove these interactions from all of these variants, by the way, because we will not need this. And the idle here, we're going to just change the opacity to 0 on the title. So now we have the idle variant as well. So now we can go here to the main canvas. And what I said is that we create this card component and we can reuse it multiple times. So I can just click Command and D to duplicate that. As you can see, we have quite, small space right here. So I'm going to just make sure that the desktop breakpoint here is a little bit bigger, maybe 1440. And now we have more space. So now we have these 2 components. But how we can make sure that we can actually change, for example, the title, the subtext, the color, the image, we can actually do that with component variables. And as you can see, some of these component variables are already added. So for example, the image, it's already there. So I can actually just upload the second image. So choose image, image 2. And as you can see, it's uploaded. So what I need to do right now is go back to the card component and create component variables for the rest of the things. So the text and the color as well. So title, I'm going to just click title here on the primary variant. And then I'm gonna make sure to go to the content, and you can see this little plus button right here. That actually means that I can assign a component variable to this property. So I'm gonna click it, create variable, plain text, and this will be the title. And here I can just reorder these component variables. I can click the subtext as well and do the same thing here. This will be called sub. And then I can also do this with the color, create variable, color, and this will be called color. And I'm going to make sure that I come here to the hover state and also make sure that it is added right here as well. As you can see, it is already added. I just wanted to make sure. And yeah, now we can go to the canvas and edit the text as well. So here it's gonna say reserve your L1. So as you can see, the text is changed. And I can also begin your all-electric road trip today. I can also write this right here. So begin your all-electric road trip today. We cannot see that the text is changed, but I think we can believe it. But actually we can change the variant here. So if we go to hover state, you can see that the subtext also changed, and we can also change the color to orange, and now it's also changed. So this is how easy to work with variants. You have to just, take some time to set it up correctly, but you can just, reuse it, hundreds of times on your website. And what's good about this is that, for example, if you have, maybe tens of hundreds of these cards on your website, and then you change your mind that, I think I want to use a little bit more rounded corners. Then you can just go into the card component and go to radius and set 100. And then all the card components on your website will have that 100 pixel corner radius, and you don't have to go through them one by one. So it is really, really useful. Now we have the card component with 3 variants, and now we can actually create the wrapping container for these cards. So I'll make sure to select both of these, and then I'll hit Option, Command and Enter with my keyboard, because this will wrap them in a stack. The gap will be changed to 16, so we have a little bit more space between them. And then the stack will be renamed to card container. Okay, so now we have the card container, and we can actually set this card container to fill. So now it fills up the available space within the viewport. So as you can see, the full desktop is filled up with this container. However, the cards within are not changing. It's because their width is set to fixed. We need to set them to fill, and now they are also filling up the available space. To make sure that they're not going to the sides, we can just click the main container here and just add some padding to the sides. So 16 on the right, 16 on the left. And then later we're going to make sure that it is even a bit smaller than this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a component for this card container. So right click, create component. And here, this will be again the default variant. And what I can do is I can create variant 1. And on variant 1, the left card will be hovered. So I'll make sure that this now takes up more space. I can easily do that by just setting this width to relative and setting it to 60%, for example. Now you can actually see that something weird is happening. And that's probably because this image is not big enough. So we have to make sure that this container here is a little bit smaller, maybe 1100 pixels. And now the image is big enough to fill up the card. So now the size is changed, so it's 60%. The variant will be hover state. So we just come here, component properties, change the variant, and here, again, change the variant to idle. That's it. This is the first variant of the card container.
Wow.
The next variant will be the opposite, so this will be idle. We're going to set it back to fill width. Then this will be relative 60, and this will have the hover state. So now we have both of the variants that we need for this card container. So now all we need to do is to add the interactions. So the way I'm going to add the interactions is I'm going to click the card here on the primary variant. I'm going to press L on my keyboard. This way I'm going to get this little connector. And I will just connect it to the variant where I want to go. So I want to go to variant 1. It's going to ask on what, so what's going to be the trigger. And I say mouse enter. So when my mouse enters the left card, I want to go to the first variant where the left card is hovered. Pretty cool. Now we can select the right card. Again, hit L, connect it to the second one. And now it doesn't even ask for the trigger because it already knows that it's going to be mouse enter. So now if we take a look at this, if I hover over the first, it's going to be going into that state. When I hover over the right one, it's going to go to the correct state again. So we can just switch between these. However, when I leave this container, so my mouse no longer hovers this card container, it doesn't do anything. So we need to also add that interactions. So how we are going to do that? We're going to click the first variant. We're going to select the full first variant. I'm going to click or press L on my keyboard again and connect it back to the default. And when we are going to go to the default, when mouse leave is happening. So when we leave the first variant, so the full card container, I want to go back to the default state. Same is for the second variant, connect it back to default, and we are going to go there on mouse leave. So now if we take a look at this, as you can see, I can hover both of these cards. The animations are happening nicely. And if I leave the card container, it goes back to the default state. So now I can go back to the home. And just to make sure that it looks a bit nicer, I can set it to fill. And I can actually add a max width to this card container. So I'm going to click here, max width, and 1100 pixel. And now as you can see, we have this. It is fully responsive. As you can see, I can change the width of this website. I can hover these and it will work perfectly. So,
Beautiful.
Michael, what do you think? Do you have any questions?
I think it's just gorgeous. It's tricky. It takes a little bit of work, but you explained it very well. I do have a question that would you hide the component on tablet and build a static version, a static version of this, or would you create a variant to use on the breakpoints?
Actually, what I saw on the website is that they just made a static version of these cards, so different variant. So what I would do is I would go into the card. Then I would make sure that we have another component variant right here. It's gonna be called mobile. And then I'm just thinking right now, because actually it's not that easy to turn this into a mobile variant just because of the structure of the component.
Well, I mean, so one possibility could be to hide this on lower breakpoints and just create the static.
Exactly. Maybe in this case, maybe that's more like it's easier, because in this case we have this background image. It's set to absolute, so it would be hard to get it out of that state. So I would just basically duplicate this card, or not even duplicate it. I would just create it from scratch. So I will just make sure that this is fixed. So we have a little bit more space. I can create this right here. So we would have, let's change it to this, and we're gonna have it below that. So we have this card. So what you would do is you grab the image, you put it here, you set this to stack. So this card is a stack again, and the distribute will be start. So the image is on the top. We will have a little bit more radius, and then maybe the background color can be this orange, and then we can just copy over the content. So this content frame here can actually go here, and then I will make sure that we have fit content, so it fits the content inside. Then we can have a little bit padding inside of the content frame, so maybe 24. Then set it to fill, and basically I think that's it. Now you have this. You can increase the gap between these. Maybe we want 12, and you can have 2 of these and then just wrap them in a stack.
Right.
Set the stack to horizontal direction, and again have around 16 pixel gap between them. And here I can just call this mobile, and here I can hide it, so visible no. And then I can come here, I can change the visibility of the card container to no, and the mobile will be back on yes. And just to make sure that it looks actually cool, I'm gonna set the width to fill, and then the direction to vertical, so they are on top of each other. And then I'm gonna set these cards as well to fill, so they fill up the available space. And that's it. As you will change viewports, so this gets a little bit smaller, they will basically jump into this state. So that's how you can potentially optimize something like this for mobile.
Yep, it makes sense. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you have any more questions? Everything was clear?
I don't. I understand how important constraints are, and creating those variables. So
Yeah. Exactly. So once you learn how to use these components and variants, and how you can add component variables inside of those, you really can speed up your workflow, and also you have more potential of like creating cool animations like this.
awesome.
So yeah.
Well, Nadi,
Great.
thanks for going over this. Very, very super helpful.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, honestly.
Have someone like you that's so knowledgeable to be able to tap into is fantastic. So
Yeah, cool.
I really enjoyed this. I wouldn't mind doing it again. I'm sure I can find other things for you to help me with.
Yeah. Let me know.
I would like to, and just you're so knowledgeable and you're so approachable. You just seem like a wonderful guy. So
Thank you very much, Michael.
okay, well, back to work, I guess.
Back to work. So that's it for today's video. I hope that you got some value out of it. If you think that this Framer support session would be also helpful for you, or you are stuck with something inside of Framer, then feel free to go down to the description. I will have a link where you can schedule your Framer support session with me, where I will basically turn into your personal Framer support for either 30 or 60 minutes. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's it for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.